like to call the Policy Review Committee meeting to order on this day of September 24th, 2025 at 4:01 PM. All right, do I have a motion to adopt our agenda?
I move.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, we have the agenda adopted. Also, do I have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from our August 27th meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We have our meeting minutes adopted. I don't have any old business, Ms. Lem. Okay. Okay.
There were some questions that Ms. Felton had asked. If you check in your, the meeting minutes from the September 24th meeting, and we do have Ms. Faith and Mr. Hopkins who may be able to answer them.
Oh, great.
It looks on the second page of your meeting minutes from August 27th, 2025, sorry, wrong date. On trust funds, Ms. Felton had, this is policy 325. Ms. Felton requested information from finance regarding a list of personal donations or states that the division may be a beneficiary of, and I had indicated that to my knowledge, we didn't have any. I am aware of one that is pending that will go to the foundation. I'm not sure if it's been completed yet, but I wasn't aware, and we decided we would ask finance folks if they were aware of any trusts or donations.
And what page was that, Ms.
It's page
Attorney?
2 of the August 24th meeting minutes. August 27, 2025 meeting minutes. It's under new business.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Policy 325. You know, this is last month's meeting minutes. And so I'm not sure that you all are aware. I'm only aware, I know
Page
that there is
3.
one pending now that's going to the Education Foundation. I'm not aware of any other donations or estates that are, or any other type of trust funds that are coming to the school division.
I am not aware of that one, but we don't have any trust funds other than the OPEB trust fund, which has nothing to do with education, which isn't really part of this policy for education. I did get a list of all the scholarships we have at the schools. You know, we have about $60,000 worth, but that's all 86 schools, and most of the schools are under $1,000. We have a school here for $5,000, so there's really no trust, but we have gotten donations for scholarships, but it's not a trust.
So how's those procedures worked, the donations for scholarships? These are already existing scholarships, correct? Is it what you're saying, we have scholarships
Yes.
and people just donate to them? Is it what you're saying to me?
All right, now, they just have, random people will just donate money for scholarships. There is a committee, and I'm not sure if you know this, Cheryl Woodhouse, but there is a committee that meets to see who gets the scholarship. I'm not a part of that. We just make sure that we track the funds.
So you're saying like at an individual school, like say Tallwood High School, if Mr. Edwards wanted to give a scholarship for track in honor of his daughter, and that just came to my mind. I don't know if he does or doesn't, but I know he's done a lot of stuff there, that he could just contact the school, and that's what you have on that piece of
Yes.
paper.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they aren't large enough to be trusts.
Right, right.
They're not part
Okay.
of this policy at all.
And Ms. Weems, you're absolutely correct. So, you know, when we recently lost our daughter, we established a scholarship at Bayside High School. It's not something we wanted to establish as a foundation. It's just something that we wanted to continue to do to support the legacy at Bayside. And so we just write a check, process it through the bookkeeper, and they have a committee that determines, based on some criteria that my husband and I want to put in place for the award winner. And then we typically will attend the award ceremony that day just to see the scholarship going out. And so that's the list of what different schools do for various activities and the likes.
So, and thank you, Ms. Woodhouse, for the explanation, because there is a process, you're saying. I'm reminded of one of the other families that we have in this community, the Lindsay family as well, and they wanted to know more about how that is done, because I don't think they've been contacted about who gets what. So, thank you. So do they contact you, Ms. Woodhouse, or you just know?
So if it's directly through the school, they would work right through the school principal. So like for me, I contacted the principal and asked if we could meet and set up a scholarship for a student who was going into education, because our daughter was a school psychologist and she worked with special education students. So we wanted, the criteria that we wanted to have in place was that the individual was majoring in and moving into education and would work directly with students in general. We didn't stipulate. So I would recommend any family who wanted to establish a scholarship, and for whatever reason, because it doesn't have to be just because you lost someone, it could be for various reasons, that they just contact the school principal.
Okay.
But the monies should be receipted properly, as we do with anything. So when I drop off the money, the bookkeeper gives me a receipt, and then they have to log it, and then that money goes to a student annually, for a scholarship.
So automatically, you give them the criteria of what the students should, what they should fall under for this scholarship. And I guess,
Well, it depends on your level of involvement. So I didn't sit down and say this, 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 and this. My husband and I only stipulated that our preference would be a student who is majoring in education. But I've seen other scholarships there, and it could be somebody, going into the culinary school. It could be someone who, like in Mr. Edwards' case, maybe someone who runs track, so it's the level of involvement, and we don't present it, like we don't go up on stage. We may do that later. Right now, it wasn't something we necessarily want to do, but we do have the opportunity at least to meet the student. So that's worked out by the individual or the foundation or the business, because that's what the businesses do as well.
first, let me say thank you for your generous opportunity for students who are doing that, Ms. House. I do appreciate that. But then I'd like to know too, probably this is my last question, how the students may aware of these scholarships? How do they get information that this scholarship exists? So the principal introduced them to it, or is there a list that they go through, or how is that done that the students know that this exists?
I should have deferred this one to Dr. Trotman, with her school counseling background, but every school lists and makes aware to the students what scholarships are available. But I think back in my school day, there were books, there were websites, but the school scholarships in general, definitely. Scholarship club. I know every school probably has a committee. Scholarship Central, there we go.
Okay.
Scholarship Central. I know every school has a scholarship committee, and they advertise, they post at the counselor's office. So they definitely do a great job in getting the word out. I think that's evident by the number of scholarships our graduates have received. But there's definitely the website you can go to, and then even the internal ones are really pushed, because some are just geared to the school itself, some are more broad, but definitely opportunities out there. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, and I appreciate the effort you put into this information, because when I saw that, I just want to make sure that I can have the proper conversation with our parents and our students and with staff about these trusts and scholarships. That's wonderful. Ms. Woodhouse, again, thank you.
All right,
All right, Ms.
Thank
Williams, the
you.
next one that Mrs. Felton had questions was on policy 326, investments. And it looks like discussion regarding the role of trustee versus investor. Ms. Felton had questions about how investments are handled and requested information from Crystal Pate, Chief Financial Officer.
Well,
Mr. Hopkins may be able to do this.
I'll start by saying the city of Virginia Beach, the city treasurer's office, has all of our cash. So they do all of our investing. Now, that each individual school, each bookkeeper, each funds, they're allowed to do a CD. That's about the most that is the most they're allowed to do. So if they think they can do a 6-month CD, we encourage them to do that. But beyond that, that's all the investing they do.
So a 6-month CD, so how is that cashed out? Does it still stay with the city? They still keep that
Oh,
money?
all right. Well, each school, so our main bank account is through the city treasurer's office. Each school has their small little banks, and that money stays at the school, meaning at the school. So they go to their own, whatever bank they're using, Bank of America or whatever. The bookkeeper will set up a CD with that bank. And when the principal and bookkeeper decide they want to cash out the CD, they'll cash it out with the bank. It'll go into their regular checking account
In the school?
in the school. It stays, everything stays in the school.
So all of these things, all these transaction and monies and transferring, it's tight, tracking, correct?
Oh, yes, yes. And internal audit goes in every year and reviews all the cash that's in that bank account. And they make sure nothing's lost.
All right, can a school be called in at any time to address with their city or if something, but I'm just trying to find out if we are being accountable and if we can just say, I want to see on the books what's happening with this money. That is done, right? We do that, Ms. Woodhouse.
So the finances in the school is the principal and bookkeeper's responsibility. So as a former building principal, I had oversight of all monies collected, and obviously you delegate that responsibility to a bookkeeper. So our budget and finance office have tight guidelines and regulations that you must follow. But I will never say to you that we have not addressed issues of theft, loss, but it is not because of procedures not being in place. It's because someone decided to circumvent those procedures. And that's why you have multiple eyes on the money. So a bookkeeper is never allowed to collect money and receipt money. It has to go through another individual. The principal is responsible for opening up, the bank statements and reviewing, and having processes put in place. So it's not from a procedural point, but I think it's not just schools. You look anywhere, theft can occur, but when it does, our audit team is amazing. They are phenomenal, and yes, although we are audited every year, they can go in at any time, and they do spot check, schools, and every school receives some type of internal audit every year, annually. And so, absolutely. If Sammy Cohen was here and still printing that notebook, that binder was probably about this thick. You had processes and procedures for everything.
It's online now.
I know, right? Well, from the report that we received from you last night, I don't have no doubt that you keep, tight books and accountability. It's just not every now and then the conversation need to be had so that the community knows that we are staying on top of what we do and being accountable, being great fiduciaries, funding that's coming in. And it's just great to hear you all talk about it so that it won't be any kind of dispute about what are we doing and how are we doing it, and if we're doing it correctly. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then also, Mrs. Williamson, policy 342, which is financial record keeping of individual school accounts. Ms. Felton shared her concerns about some funds that were raised at a school activity that were lost and asked about the ability to use electronic transactions. I'm assuming that's for paying for events. Discussion followed on the transparency in handling school versus parent-run funds, and clarification was requested from Mr. Hopkins. The school division, the school division is not responsible for how outside organizations run finances, and Mrs. Felton asked if there's any way to provide training to parent-run organizations on how to handle fundraising.
Okay?
I'm not sure if I knew about this one, but you're talking about booster clubs, and there is
PTAs
a.
probably.
What,
PTAs too, probably.
PTA, all right, yeah. So there is a PowerPoint on our website that bookkeepers are supposed to give to the booster clubs to follow. And it tells what the parent organization is supposed to do and how they're supposed to act.
How has that moved forward? Are we being being diligent about getting that done? Because I know all people, not all people, but most people are not always technical savvy. So how is that procedure working out for us? Is it proving to be beneficial in keeping our books straight of what they're doing?
Well,
So, booster clubs and PTAs are their own entity. They're responsible for collecting, receipting, and keeping their records in order. Now, I can't speak to the booster club, but I know PTAs are required to have annual audits. And as a building principal, I was privy to those audits. But their money does not run through the hands of the school division. So, as a building principal, I always reminded my bookkeeper, we do not collect, receipt. We even had a box installed that said PTA. So you drop your envelope in there. They are responsible for their own monies, and it was the same way. We had Band Booster Club, a quite large one at Tallwood. They are responsible for having a governing board, elected, appointed, however they want to do it, but they are responsible for keeping the members of their group informed with, just like we do. Have a monthly meeting, minutes, a treasury report, and the members of their committee could ask questions, but we did not get involved with auditing them, but every PTA is required to hire an outside entity that audits their books, and they actually have to post that. But I'm not for sure if the boosters are that.
It depends on the
To-
booster
yeah.
clubs should establish themselves as 501c3s,
Right.
state organizations. You would be checking their articles of incorporation, their bylaws. I know I did that when I ran, my kids were in school, and usually if you've done it properly, you will require that there's an outside audit done and you'll turn in paperwork, but to maintain their status, they're going to probably have to provide some documentation as to why they're a 501c3. They should be filing a tax statement also.
Right.
Once they register as a 501c3, which is going to be a federal designation at the state level, they should get some information from the SEC about their required filings after that. But we don't go in and monitor them. PTAs are monitored pretty heavily both by their state, the regional, the city, the regional, the state. They're pretty good about monitoring that because their affiliation depends on their cooperation with those rules. So, and because we have usually principal and school staff members on it, you've probably seen those if you've been a administration at the school, whereas a booster club may or may not have a staff member on it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your
Well,
time.
we do have quarterly bookkeepers meetings, and I can have this in the training in the next bookkeepers meeting to make sure that our bookkeepers, it's on top of their mind about booster clubs.
Thank you so much. I would appreciate that, and thank you for your time.
I think those were all the questions, let me flip the page. Those are all the questions I think we had from, left over from last month.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on to new business, policy 327, borrowing.
Hold on, I can go forward. Okay, that should be showing up on the screen. This is 327, it's a simple policy, borrowing, the school board may borrow funds as described in the legal reference to this policy. We simply reviewed it, we had no changes offered for this.
All right, do I have any questions or concerns for my colleagues? Okay, do I have a motion to accept policy 327 and move it on to the school board for information?
A motion?
Motion by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bonesteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, so policy 327 will go to the school board.
All right, next policy moves on to the personnel section. This is employee conduct. It's a general policy that applies to all of our employees. And I don't think there's any changes. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, context. Ms. Williams, you had asked questions about where dress code issues for employees were located. We think this is the policy that would most closely align with dress code for you, so we put in 4.2 for you to review because you were going to bring up concerns to the PRC about dress.
Yes, one of our colleagues wanted us to kind of discuss this in reference to the, wearing, for our employees / teachers wearing jeans to school and/or having to pay money when they wear jeans on Fridays. So the colleague just kind of wanted to know where it was in policy and, so this is it. So 13, number 13 is really kind of where it addresses dress in professional manner that is neat, clean, appropriate, and safe in the workplace at school-sponsored activities and when representing the school division. So I just brought this forward because it was requested by a colleague.
So, Ms. Weems, if I may clarify, again, going back to my school administration days, no employee is required to pay money to wear jeans. So jeans have never been considered a professional attire for a school setting. There have been times where schools would use it as a fundraiser
Right.
where you could voluntarily donate and wear jeans. And let me tell you, you had to define what jeans were and what they look like because unfortunately, jeans give people the impression of dress down and it goes to a whole nother level. But you could have it as a fundraiser. So for instance, I do remember we did a jean day for support of the PTA. So if you want to wear jeans on Friday with your collared Independence Eagle shirt or Tallwood Lions shirt, you could pay $2, $3, $5, whatever it was established, strictly voluntary.
Right, yeah.
And I was very clear, we will not be monitoring it. Don't bring it to me that somebody wore jeans and you didn't get money. I'm not, we put it out there, we trust everyone. It's never been a day-to-day attire, and it was never, used as a you must pay. It's always voluntary.
Yeah, if I stated that incorrectly, the teachers can pay a small amount if they would like to participate in the wearing of jeans. So I personally agree that I don't think jeans are professional and now, like you said, you've got jeans with holes, jeans with raveling, whatever fringe and all that stuff. So, I think 13 is fine. That's why, I don't have any problem with it, but I just wanted to respect my colleagues', desire to have us to look at this. So I personally don't think it needs to be changed, but I will yield to my colleagues.
Reading it, it says what it means. I really don't have a problem with it. Maybe when you take it to the board, maybe the colleague that had a concern about it would put more emphasis on what they're asking. It is interesting about how they use a phrase about paying toward jeans. I've never heard that before, not unless you're having a fundraiser.
Yeah.
But, I'm in agreement with you, Ms. Wings. I see nothing wrong with it, with number 13, and I will proceed as forward.
Okay, do you have anything, Mr. Bonsiel? Yeah. Okay, all right. Do I have a,
Do you want to bring this one forward to the school board for a discussion, or just want to send it back to, tell the school board member who indicated that we didn't see anything we needed?
yeah, since it was only one request and it hasn't been brought up at meetings, I would be fine to call that school board member and tell them, I don't see any reason to bring it back to the school board. Okay. We don't need to vote on that if we're not taking it back, do we, Ms. Linetti?
I think you would just say, let the chair have further discussion with the school board member who brought it up.
Okay, so I will bring that up to our colleague. Thank you. Okay, next.
Next goes to 4.12, which is also, I believe, 4.12 is assignment, reassignment, and transfer. I believe this is another one, Ms. Williams, someone had a concern about it, and we do have individuals from the Department of Human Services, Human Resources, to assist with questions. And I think it had the 3-year transfer rule, I believe is what you were interested in.
Yes, we had, a couple people on the school board had several employees to reach out to them in frustration that they felt like, that they were unable to transfer, and so we got a lot of conflicting information. So I just wanted to clarify the voluntary transfer rule. And so if you could just make sure that we're clear on that, Ms. Woodhouse, so that everybody's on the same page, because I heard several different scenarios of why one can and cannot transfer and when, and depending on when they change schools and how many years and all that stuff.
So HR is in the room, and I'm not for sure if they had this one on their agenda or not, but I do know we pulled the policy, I think it was this morning, to refresh all of our memories, and it's policy 4-12, but it also goes into regulation 4-12.1 that gets into the specifics on when employees can transfer. So I think the question proposed was, when can a continuing contract teacher transfer to another school? And so it indicated after you completed your probationary period and you're not on a plan of improvement or in the process of any disciplinary action, that you can apply to transfer. It's not an automatic. You have to go interview for positions, and if the principal makes a recommendation. But once you move, you have to stay at that school for 3 years, and then you're eligible for another transfer. I think, from my understanding, is the individuals wanted to be able to transfer more so than the 3-year requirement. But there was a caveat that was added that said, under special circumstances, you could request to move. So for instance, maybe you've moved in the city, you relocated, and your current school maybe is a long distance, and you have children, younger children, and it's causing a hardship. So when this regulation was modified, there was a caveat that was added that indicated that although when you chose to move, you committed to being at that new school for at least 3 years, if there were circumstances that warranted, you could seek the opportunity to move again. And the reason that came about, and sometimes I know it's easy for people to say, why can't I just keep moving and moving? Because we have 5,200, we have over 5,000 teachers. And you're hiring, fulfilling vacancies, and you're processing those who are moving. It's quite a bit. Also, we need stability in our schools. We need our children to have stability. And so if all staff could just every year change positions, then that does not give the stability that our schools need and our students need, and provide the environment for which our kids can thrive in. So it's pretty laid out, but again, when this concern came up several years ago, I think I was in HR. That caveat was added so they can have a conversation with their principal. Principal can reach out to the Department of School Leadership. They can work together and see if it can come about. But it's not just I hate to say it, hop around, move your location every year.
Yeah, right, and I can understand, obviously, that, but I don't want to have a teacher in a situation where they feel like they're stuck and can't, transfer because of some, like underlying or legitimate reason. So I'm glad that you
Absolutely.
pulled out with that,
Which is absolutely.
yeah.
And you will find in many circumstances, because now I haven't been in HR for a year. There were not many requests when I was in HR, because again, when people interview and move to another location, they only move because they want and receive the location they wanted. Mm-hmm. And so traditionally they'll move and not ask to move again. But we've had a few small requests come through, but I am pretty confident when I was in HR, that number was like under 5. Dr. Trotman is saying
Yeah,
she's had
yeah.
1. So,
2019, I've had one, and I
my
remember her distinctly. I'm sorry.
oh yes.
I'm sorry.
Because I was about,
Since the exception was added, and I've had one, and I've been in human resources since 2019. But when the exception was added, I think in 2023, I remember distinctly the case. There was one, and the individual worked with the principal, and she was able to get a recommendation. So when they're eligible, they still interview and
Yeah.
have to be recommended.
Right,
So she, in that case, she was recommended, and the two principals worked together, Human Resources and Docile. But there's been one that I've known of since 2023 under the exception. Even before the exception, there was the caveat of it's Docile being able to work with Human Resources. So it was still there, but we felt that it was necessary to add it there to spell it out a little bit easier for teachers.
okay, yeah, okay, so I'm in my first 3 years, so I have to finish that first 3 years. Is that 3 years in Virginia Beach, or if I transfer from Norfolk? But it's 3 years at the school in Virginia Beach, is that, okay, correct?
Yes, so
Correct, okay.
state code, even probationary, so if a teacher left Norfolk and didn't finish their probationary period, when they came here, they begin the probationary period again. You
Okay,
must
all over.
complete the
Okay.
probationary period in the school division.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, so then after that 3 years, I can ask for a voluntary transfer. If I get it and I'm at school A, then go to school B, I have to wait the 3 years. And then is that all I get, or can I keep doing that for 3 years, or is there some?
Every 3 years.
Okay,
So
so you
you
just
are
wait every 3
eligible
years. Okay.
absolutely to seek
Okay.
a voluntary transfer.
To seek, but you
to
don't always
seek,
get it, right?
Absolutely. However, if there's an exception, it's
can go to
clear
your
under this
principal.
regulation
Right,
that
okay.
we've always had the exception, but now you can request an exemption of the 3-year
Okay.
policy.
Yeah, when we
of
were looking
regulation.
at, when I was looking at it, I didn't see that in the regulations, so I'm really glad to see that. And what is a continuing contract?
So the continuing
is
contract
that
is,
exactly?
yes, ma'am, it's, and I have the state code, but once you have completed the probationary period, you move to continuing contract.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're not evaluated annually, you've, met those conditions of the probationary period. So that's when you, are on continuing contract. So if you've reached continuing contract in another school division and you come to us, then you are PC, what we call probationary continuing contract for a year. So there are a lot of differences, but that's what continuing contract is overall.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bowenfield, did you have anything?
No.
Ms. Felton?
I do. Thank you, Ms. Trotman, for your time.
Yes.
The teachers, you talked in detail about the teachers as well. So other employees, like teacher's assistant, custodial,
Yes.
those staff, do they fall under this criteria as such, or is this totally different?
So.
Especially I'm more concerned about TAs.
Yes, ma'am. So our non-exempt staff, so when we get out of the instructional realm, there's a probationary period of 18 months. So after the 18 months, a non-instructional staff member or classified staff member may seek and accept a lateral transfer once per school year. So they meet that 18-month probationary period, and then they can seek a lateral transfer. However, you can accept a promotion or a demotion at any time, just as long as a suitable replacement has been located for you. So lateral, same pay grade, different position. After that 18-month probationary period, you may seek a lateral transfer once per year. Or you may always seek, no one will ever hold back from a promotional opportunity, or some folks want what we deem as a demotion because of pay grade. So you can always seek a promotion or demotion, or one can always seek a promotion or demotion.
And again, like I said, not that they're going to get that, but they can seek it.
Absolutely.
All right. I'll wait I'm good.
Okay, I had one more question. Do you know what, our neighboring school systems do? I mean, is this pretty common practice to have this 3-year before you can voluntarily transfer, or is that something that we uniquely do, or?
And honestly, Mrs. Williams, I would tell you confidently, about 10 years ago, but I can't say now because I would assume different school divisions are doing what they deem as necessary. I came from another school division, and at that time, they were following the 3-year protocol. I have not surveyed local school divisions to, understand what they're doing now. Virginia Beach is larger, and again, I worked in human resources in a neighboring school division that wasn't as large. And at that time, the 3-year protocol was in place. But I cannot tell you what's happening now without me surveying.
Yeah. And the first evaluation, is that at the end of 3 years? Because in one place it says after the first evaluation.
That's for the classified employees, so
Okay,
that's
classified.
not
Okay,
the,
okay,
right.
Okay,
It spells it out, it spells it out more in the regulation rather than the policy.
okay. So we have this basically, so you're just not, like you said, for consistency, so you're just not having 1,000 teachers move every year.
Also, the evaluation piece, so when you look at the Virginia State Code, it talks about, really achieving excellence in instruction. So when teachers are in place and they're being evaluated annually through that probationary period to grow in the profession, it just, when I was a building administrator, when I would start with the brand-new teacher and 3 years later, you see the growth because we've been working together, we've been coaching, I know your mentors. We have a lot of support staff and resources, and I know what resources have been given to a particular teacher. So this is just in my professional commentary. I just feel that when you are in a place and not from year to year, in those first formative years of teaching, I go back to the state code, it just talks about in that first year, the instructional excellence and what you get and the resources and just being able to follow and work with a person and get those resources for them, at the end of that 3 years. I have experienced growth, for teachers, but again, that caveat of the exemption request is there if there's an extenuating circumstance.
All right. Okay, do I have a motion to send, policy 412 to the school board for information?
Does it need, are we making any adjustments to this, or
yeah.
those questions?
Yeah, we're not really making any changes, so,
Ms. Bates, can I,
yes.
since we do not know this particular individual, I would recommend they do what we tell every staff member to do, to have a conversation with their building administrator, and they can always reach out to human resources.
Human resources, okay, okay. So, I don't think there's any, need, that since this wasn't on the 5-year plan or wasn't requested by many colleagues, so I will, do the communication back. Okay, policy 510.
510 came on, again, because I believe you asked a question, and we've had a former school board member ask this question a lot of times about Code of Virginia 22.14-4.2, designation of race and ethnicity. And this question gets asked every year by this individual, and I know the superintendent's office has answered this multiple times, but there was an amendment to this code section, and it said that no student or his parent shall be required to disclose information related to the student's race or ethnicity unless one, student or his parent is given an opportunity to designate other for the student's race or ethnicity, or two, such disclosure is required by federal law. A former school board member asked that we add that into the code section because she had been instrumental working with this when the General Assembly passed it. My understanding is after speaking with Mr. Jameson, and the last time we did it, Dr. Saltner was chief of staff, I mentioned to Mr. Jameson's position is they are required to fill out the designation on the Virginia Department of Education forms that come down, which is a requirement from the federal government. So we've never changed this statute, put it into our policies because Mr. Jameson's indicated it's required on our forms. And once we put it into the system, that really is the only time we're asking that information because we're required to do what VDOE asks us, which is coming down from the U.S. Department of Education. That's a requirement of federal law. So that's been the explanation we provided in the past, why we did not put it into the policy.
Yeah, and my suggestion, and I pass this out to my colleagues, is this is the amendment from the code that you just read, but it says, no student or parent shall be required to disclose this information, unless they are given an option to designate other, or if it's required by federal law. So that if it's required by federal law, that covers your concern.
We could put in there, just because there would not be other circumstance where we would give you the opportunity to put other. The last explanation I remember from Dr. Saltner was they thought it might be confusing that was an option for you, but it's not an option for us because we have to comply with federal law.
Yeah, I would still feel more comfortable to be compliant with Virginia code and law to just add this as D, because it covers, it's gonna give them the chance to check other, plus if they have to disclose because of federal law, it covers that too. So to me, it's a win-win if we add this paragraph to, and just add a D. I would like to make that suggestion.
So I put it on the board, I'll have to finish typing it in here, but.
I do. I mean, if what they're saying is not required, it's not obvious, it's already there. I don't know, what is the point of making it more visual? Since you said, Dr. Saltman said would make it more confusing. If we are doing it anyway, because we have to, it's required that we do acknowledge ethnicity and race in our schools. Is that not true? That's required?
We are required to report to the Virginia Department of Education by the designated race or ethnicities codes, so we put that in, and that goes up to the Virginia Department of Education. I'm assuming that then goes to the U.S. Department of Education, so we are required to put that designation in there.
So why, stop it, so why are we required to do that? Why are we required to do that, to send that information to VDOE?
I'm assuming just for reporting purposes that they're monitoring subgroups on there, but, yeah, I don't know everywhere it's used. But that, when I've had this discussion in the past, and like I said, this comes up almost every year for the last 4 or 5 years, we don't, once we place it into the system, we don't have a reason to ask for it again. So when, when you see the testing data, it's a good example when they show you by groups, it'll pull from the student's ID number, it automatically pulls there. Well, I understood the concern that individuals wanted to be listed as other, which is something you can do on the census, in other words, the U.S. Census. It's just not an option that's been provided to us in our reporting purposes. So we do report out on race and ethnicity, just as we would do sex on there, because they'll show up. But once put into our system, we don't have a reason to ask for it again. It's just designated into the system that way. So it'll pull up every time your student ID number comes up. I think that's the best explanation I can give you.
Well, right now, to clarify, right now, we do not give an option of other, and that's what this is going to do. This is because of this.
It won't, because unless it's somebody, and I don't know another reason why we would be asking this information, because we pull ours from the database. So once you fill out your registration forms, whatever your family has marked is what we're going to put into the system, and it will stay that way in the system for us. It'll track with your student number. It's not like every time you fill out a form, you're being asked to put it on there. It goes into our system database.
Well, if I'm hearing you right, Attorney Linetti, asking for race or ethnicity, it's necessary. So I guess what I'm hearing that adding others, it just gives the parents an option. I mean, if we need the information, I'm trying to understand why we are designating this particular code to go in to clarify others. Who would it benefit? Where is it coming from? What information would we glean from using this? I'm just a bit concerned about.
The only time I could think, and again, not working at the school base, so I can't tell you where else it would come, if somebody were to ask for some other reason on a form, I guess, they'd need to know that if they're going to do it, that they may have to, like, I don't even know why a teacher would ask that question, why you would need to race or ethnicity, they would have to give you the option of doing other. And Ms. Woodhouse, I might have to pass it to you, so when a school would otherwise be asking for race or ethnicity, I'm not really clear when that would happen. Because if it's one of our required testing, that pulls from with your student ID and what your number in your system is, so we shouldn't have another form for this.
Well, some parents, it must come up, if you said that it's come up several times, some parents or students do not feel comfortable selecting, and they would rather have an other. And if this is in the code and we're supposed to be following this, I think that we should be consistent and follow this amendment. If
Well, the
it's-
problem
if
is
it's
the or, if we are, such a closure is required by federal law, so
Right,
when we put it into your registration form where it's gonna come out, that for us is required by our VDOE, which is required by federal law. We don't give you that option there. Now, if there's some other form you're filling out that I'm just not aware of, then you might have to do it under those circumstances. But on your registration form, that's not, sorry, gonna be an option for you.
What we can also do, I'm gonna make note, because we know classroom teachers create forms. I remember filling out quite a few forms, and some of them may have it on there. I don't know that they use it the way they used to, because we have we have better learning management systems now where staff can pull whatever information they need. But I can definitely follow up with the Department of School Leadership to see in what other instance, because as Ms. Linetti said, I'm trying to rack my mind around when and why someone would be asking that question, except at the registration process, which you're required to, complete with your form. So I'm not for sure, but if there is a form, some forms or something out there floating, then we can get communication out to our building leaders to ask them to take a look at it. And if anyone has anything specific, that they can bring to our attention, that would also be helpful. But, when you send home that, I call it the first day of school packet, sometimes teachers will include things, just so that they could have information readily available for them in their classrooms and not have to get on the computer. But I don't know why, that would be a question. So we can look into it, because
Okay.
again, I don't know the whole history behind
okay.
it.
Should we, bring this back to policy review and so that Ms. Woodhouse can come back with that information? And then I'll try to reach out to get some more specifics as well. Is that okay with my colleagues?
I'm in agreement with that, yes.
Yeah, okay, so we'll bring this one back, and then Ms. Woodhouse, we'll look forward to what you find out. Okay, policy policy 540.
540 is student-led assemblies and demonstrations. I believe there's also a regulation that goes with this, Lisa, I think it's in the packet too, like 40.1. So 540.1 is just demonstrations, it's related to this, but 540 is the actual policy. I think I made some minor Scrivener changes in here, but my understanding was there was some concern about some recent demonstration issues, and we were asked to put this on and relook at it to determine if we needed to make some changes or not.
Do we have any comments? I'm gonna let y'all go first. I've got several, but Mr. Bowensteel, do you have any comments or concerns?
Couple things, but on B1, where it says regular school hours shall be made available, I was thinking that regular school hours may be made available.
Sorry, B1. And this is, gonna be sometime both during and outside of regular school hours may be made available. You would substitute here, I don't know if you can see this, I may have to blow this up a little. Oops.
But if we're dealing with the Freedom of Act, the First Amendment, and the Constitution, changing that, wouldn't that be a conflict of giving them their right to do that? You're taking to maybe, what word did you use? We are saying shall be, and you want to change it to
Maybe.
maybe. There could be a conflict of what we're saying the First Amendment is saying, Freedom Amendment. I remember this coming before us one time before, and we had to wrestle with this particular piece of policy because of things that were happening at the time, and unfortunately, it's happening again, dealing with the freedom of speech, the First Amendment, the Constitution. And our students are really boldly acting on that with all means possible. So I'm thinking, or I'm feeling that changing it from shall be is a conflict of what you're saying their freedom of speech is, not making it available. Because I do know that there were times that we had some rallies, and they had them outside in a specific location designated to where they were having them at, and they went off quite successfully without any kickback. So changing that, I would have a concern that it would be a kickback from your students and parents, changing it, relating it to the freedom of speech and allowing us to make sure that they're having this space to do it. If we're going to stick with the freedom of speech and the First Amendment, their rights.
Well, so I'm confused here, because 1 and 2, and then the paragraph under A seems to be, I don't know if they're talking about different things, because in 2, it's school-sponsored assemblies. I find that to be different than demonstrations or spontaneous assemblies. So what is it talking about in 1 exactly? I mean, because if we have a school-sponsored assembly, I mean, I did opioid assemblies. I don't think, though, if I call the school has to have a time slot for me to do my presentation. It's up to the principal, and it's up to, so what are we talking about here? Because it seems like Ms. Felton's talking about something else, and that it says in number 2, school-sponsored assemblies during school hours may be optional. So what is the number 1 talking about?
I'm noticing the terminology is saying student assemblies, so I'm not sure if they're meaning spontaneous. Now, spontaneous is C, where the students just randomly get up and do something. So I'm not sure if they're trying to make, this is an older policy, so I'm not really sure the history on this one. But it may have been that students organize. I know in 2, the school can make arrangements for school-sponsored events, and they don't require everybody to come to them. So, but that's only secondary level. So elementary school kids can't get together and say, let's save the rainforest, and do that. But at secondary, they might be able to do that, and that would be, the school could say, we're going to have a demonstration or a student assembly about rainforest. It's going to happen during one lunch, and you're going to, meet in the cafeteria to do that. I think B1 might be trying to go to other types of student assemblies, but I don't have a good example for you.
Well, I think that needs to be clarified,
Right.
definitely between 1 and 2, because like Ms. Felton said, if you point to the paragraph above you, that's freedom of speech, but then if you talk about someone coming in, or even students doing an assembly, an educational assembly, or like I said, an opioid, I don't think the school is mandated to let every group come in that wants to do an assembly. So I think 1 and 2.
This
needs-
means, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, just to clarify. 1 seems to be if you have sometime both during and outside of regular school hours, I think it's the regular school hours, shall be made available for student assemblies with relevant ideas and topics. So they could say after school, like a common one is see you at the poll day, which is a September event, which is generally done before school starts. On it. Now, the second one is in the secondary schools, attendance at school-sponsored events during school hours may be optional. And I'm wondering if they're making a difference, talking about during, taking time away from the regular school day. The principal side of attendance is required. The decision is based on the criteria the student body will benefit from the presentation, necessity, and imparting information to all students. So I'm not sure, but it might be trying to make a difference between when you're taking class time away versus we can say you might be doing class time or you might be doing after school.
Well, number one says there's sometime both during. I mean, should we have number one sometime before or after school or outside? Should we keep number one just outside of regular school? Because it almost, yeah,
Or either, you're right, because when you read the opening statement, and it talks about the freedom of speech, the First Amendment, you read the first one, but as you move through this, it sounds like we need another policy. You're talking about two things that's coming together that are totally different. You're talking about an organized demonstration compared to an assembly. So maybe we need two different policies to explain where we're going. I would like to see one concerning organized demonstration using the first freedom of speech, First Amendment, and broaden that number one. And anything below number one should be maybe another policy or explained a little bit better. The two is not going together for me.
yeah.
They're not making sense. Lack of a better word, they're not coming together explaining what they are in a explanatory way.
Yeah, 'cause
Clearly,
one- yeah.
it's not clear.
Yeah, because one is pretty much student-led that would encompass, spontaneous assemblies and the, demonstration, the regulation, and the other one is if the principal is a totally different type of assembly. It's one for the whole school, and then they will determine if everybody needs to go or the criteria, so it's two different topics, in my opinion.
Right.
I agree with Ms. Felton. Can we
Alright.
work on this and bring back two
Yes,
separate
I'm
policies?
trying to type in some, but I
great.
think where we're going, we can probably come back with this, and then
Yeah,
maybe this is,
is that fine with you, Mr. Bowen Steele, to work on this?
do you want to take a look at the next ones, just to see if there's anything else you want to have us work on?
Yes, because on the spontaneous assembly number 2, you're speaking of a student attending a peaceful spontaneous assembly at a time when the student has an obligation to be in class will suffer the school punishment or discipline that will come from missing the class. See, that's where it's clashing with me. Trying to put those two things, the assembly and the demonstration together. They're two totally different things for me, the way we're reading it here.
And I just, with the spontaneous assemblies though, I mean, I do have some heartburn that it's almost, not encouraging, but almost like, okay, you can do this during a school class that you're obligated to do, but we really don't want you to do it because we're gonna punish you, but yet you can.
I mean, they get to make a choice.
Well,
Yeah, but
I mean, they gotta be in class.
well, I know, but I don't know if it's our job to encourage them to miss class for a spontaneous assembly. I think we need to take this back and divide it up into two.
All right, why don't we take a look to see if, because this could be like, see you at the poll day, which is a good example. It's usually prayer around the poll in September before class starts.
that was-
So that
yeah.
wouldn't be a problem.
Right, but
But
it's
if you
during
decided to walk out at
instructional
10 o'clock during
Right.
English class, that's
Right.
a problem. All right, why don't we work on this a little bit more? I think we have an idea what you're concerned about here, and
And then I'm also with the spontaneous or with anything, I would also like it in there that, I don't know what how to put it, or if it's even on here about, parents attending, elected officials attending these student-led, if it's a student-led assembly, I think it needs to be spelled out. Are students going, or elected officials or parents really organizing it? And to kind of make a differentiation at some point between a student, what exactly is a student-led?
All right, why don't we take this back, and Mrs. Woodhouse will find the appropriate staff members to work on, maybe we'll see what they have in other school divisions. One of the things we started implementing a number of years ago was to make sure students are safe. If the principal said, okay, one lunch, y'all want to get and talk about the rainforest, you can do that, but you can't go out on the main street because we don't want
Right,
you, but even if you walk out of school, we're responsible for
Right,
you, so we don't
right.
want a kid getting hit by a car. We don't want inappropriate people coming up and hurting somebody
Right,
on there. So when they do this, they usually have rules. Generally, we try to put them in an area where they're protected, like the stadium or somewhere where you can
Right.
demonstrate, but we're not gonna let other people in there, and we're gonna keep you. They also are required to have a staff member there. We don't just let 50 kids hang out by themselves. So, maybe we can flesh that part out a little bit. We wanna make sure the kids are safe. If it's gonna be allowed to be done, we need to they still have to be protected, because they're still
Right.
our responsibility.
When you started off with the First Amendment, that at the top, paragraph at the top, and then you came to definition number one, that's the start of where we should be, because we are saying they have the right, and all of the things you just said about having it in a place, principal being aware of, safe place, who are allowed to come,
Yeah.
and, because we've had those.
Yeah.
And they designated a space right on the school when they had, and the last, they give them an hour to do so. And after they did, they returned back into school. Remember those days? So I would like to see this.
Why don't we have Mrs. Woodhouse figure out who the
Yeah.
appropriate staff members
Right.
are to work with us on? It's probably
That'll work.
docile staff, makes the most sense.
Right, because I had some questions as well, because is it truly spontaneous? As a principal, I've never had a spontaneous assembly. My students had to have a conversation with, like, how am I supposed to, as a building
true.
principal, respond to
Yeah.
kids who just decide they wanna get up and walk out to gather? I'm not for sure spontaneous is the right word,
Yeah.
because that sense, like, I'm sitting over here saying to myself, absolutely not, if I was the principal. So these walkouts that we've had, they have been organized, communicated,
Yeah.
worked out with staff, and usually it was around a school shooting or some other event that occurred. So I'm reading this and I'm left with the impression that, like, anybody can just decide, okay, well, you can't use your phone now, but I'm just gonna tell 10 people at lunchtime
Yeah,
that we all gonna get
yeah.
up and walk out of class.
Yeah.
And so I'm just,
call
I
it a
wanna make
spontaneous
sure,
assembly,
yeah,
yeah.
cause that's called, you will be disciplined.
Yeah.
Because
And
I
in
don't have,
twenty
like,
twenty-four,
how
we did
gonna
add
run
the part
behind
about
you?
disciplining them.
Like, that, so I just,
Yeah, that
I'm
needs to be
wondering if
spelled out.
spontaneous is the right word, but we
yeah.
can get together
Yeah.
and talk about this
Yeah,
because,
and quite honestly, the climate requires us to make sure they're safe.
Right.
And the appropriate reasons, so we do
Exactly.
have to.
That's a great point, though. You're right. They,
Yes.
5 kids at lunch can say,
yeah, we're walking out
Yeah,
and
okay.
then,
all
yes,
right.
so-
Okay, well, bring this back, and as soon as y'all work on something, can you give it to us? Because this is gonna have a lot of discussion and thoughts. I would like both my colleagues to have it in print so they can scratch up what their ideas and we can get together. We wanna make sure that we get this right, but,
Yes.
yeah, we're gonna bring this back to
Bring it back.
PRC.
Yes,
But those were good suggestions, everybody.
yes.
Okay, bring back. Okay, 628, driver ed.
We needed to update, there was a slight change in this, and so we wanted to make sure we were updating the policy, which if I'm looking at, had not been looked at in a very long time, since 2017. So it will now read, classroom driver education will be made available to all eligible students according to the Code of Virginia and the Virginia Board of Education regulations. I'm sorry, this is policy 628. And behind the wheel instruction will be offered to eligible students during and after school hours as instructors and vehicles are available. One of the concerns was we can't guarantee everybody's gonna make it and we're gonna have instructors, but also, so the first one, classroom instruction, we will provide to you behind the wheel as made available. And it may not be able to happen during the, school day, it may have to be offered after hours.
During, after, yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, I can't find my phone.
It's all good. It's, when your mother that happened.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. All right, so do we have any concerns or questions about driver's ed?
No, just a quick question. I mean, it might not be related to this, but I want to know, Attorney Linetti, are students still required to go before the judge before they get their license?
In Virginia, you are, and I can speak to this personally when my husband does this. You go, and interesting, most judges will hand it to the parent, and they hand the driver's license unless you're an adult student. But otherwise, it gets handed to the parent with a long lecture about appropriateness, and the parent decides when they give it to the student in there. So most judges will follow that procedure. They do require you to come to court to receive it.
So when this, and I'm just asking for the hearing public, when does this procedure start and why?
It's been around. Oh my goodness, I've been in, when I was in court, and this is my fourth decade practicing law. It's been around as long as I can remember. It's a very Virginia thing, and the judges generally give you a really good lecture, scare the heck out of you, and if the judge is doing it right, they hand it to the parent and tell the parent or legal guardian when you think the student is responsible enough, you give it to the student, and you can take it away from the student. So you usually get that lecture unless you're 18, and then you get it yourself.
So we all required,
All right. Miss Cleveland's indicated, as young as she is, that she also had to go through this procedure. It's a very Virginia procedure. Yeah, it's great.
it's a good thing. I'm not knocking it. It's a good thing. It does put the fear of God in the students when they go before the judge. He's giving them all the spectrum what they should do. So I just needed the public to hear that this is still active and we are following all the codes. Thank you so much for that.
Well, judges will tell you it's one of the happy things that they get to do in J&D court, so they like this process.
Okay, do I have a motion to bring, did you have something else? Do I have a motion to bring 628 driver education back to school
So
board?
move.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Ms. Brunzio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Driver ed will go back to school board for information.
Next one, Matt Lorbeck.
17, notification.
Do we have
of school
628? This one, 628, isn't. Oh, that was, okay. I'm sorry. Policy 7.2. This is notification of school board meetings. I'm sorry. Oh, reminder to make sure we're speaking into the microphone. So, one of the things that we had to add in that we noticed, we're just checking the legal references. Under A, the school board through the clerk shall give notice of the date, time, location, and remote location if required. Now, remote location, this means the entire board, and that for us at local government only happens in emergency circumstances. State level organizations can do remote meetings. We can only do it in emergency circumstances. So if it's gonna be a total remote, or we're gonna be off campus, if we're gonna go to Plaza like we do, or somewhere else, and then we have to give that location if required. Also notice that we have to put it on our website on there. B, section would be notification of school board meetings will read, any person may annually file with the clerk a written request of notification of the school board meeting. The request will include the requester's name, address, zip code, day, time, telephone number, electronic mailed address available, and organization if any. And then it'll go down to the next sentence, which will read, notice of all school board meetings will be made directly to the requester. Without objection by the requester, notice may be provided by electronic means. So that's just, we've always had this procedure, we just made the language consistent with what the code is offering. And then we cleared up on section B, which is public attendance. Members of the public are encouraged to attend all open meetings of the school board, and any person wishing to address the school board should abide by the procedures as outlined in School Board Policy Bylaw 147, public participation. Members of the public requiring accommodation to attend, listen to, or observe an open school board meeting should contact the clerk of the school board in advance of the meeting. We have that on all of our notices, but we never put it in policy. We want to make sure if anybody has a concern about their ability to be able to observe our meetings or come to them, that they know that's who they contact. But that is on all of our notices. Those are the only recommendations we're making. This is coming on the 5-year review.
Okay, so I'm fine with all this, cause like you said, most of it we're doing already, we're just putting it down in policy.
Under A, under the third line, it reads, the clerk of the school board, is this would be "and" or it would be "a"? And on the school division?
I'm sorry, where are we reading that? Oh, and.
It should be
oh,
in the
you're
third
right.
line.
So, I see it. In the office of the clerk of the school board, yeah, it should read, yeah, that should not be pulled. So I'm going to
Not
reject that
going to
change.
read.
So it should read, and on the school division website, so I've just rejected the, change.
Just going fast.
Okay. Oops. All right, so what I did was up here, I don't know if you can see in the section where you had school board, where we had pulled out, left it and we just returned it back to the regular and.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Brownsteel? All right, do I have a motion to, accept policy 7.2 and send it to the school board for information?
So move.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it will go to the school board meeting.
713, also new commemoration section, has to do with appeals of school board decisions. This is simply taken out of the state law under 22.187, and we are not recommending any changes to this.
All right, I see no comments, so, I need a motion to accept policy 713 and
So moved.
take it to the school board. Motion by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and it goes to the school board.
721 is Citizens Advisory Committees. You did extensive amount of work on this, I'm gonna say about 5 or 6 years ago. You're going to get an example in another meeting too of Citizens Advisory Committees you're gonna appoint to. So I think we did a couple scrivener's changes you'll see here, just correcting the punctuation. And we're not recommending any changes to this section. I'm sorry, in this policy. And the only changes you'll see, and you can see them by the marks on the side, are simply grammatical changes. And if you're not familiar with this, what we did a number of years ago was we took all the citizen advisory committees, put them over under section 721, and then we kind of standardized their procedures for how they get nominated, appointed to these groups and the issues. So then you'll see regulations after this will teach one of these groups, like SEAC, the career and technical, the gifted, they all have their own regulations, so if there's anything specific in there. But we were just standardizing that, so see some of the rules here, so that we were treating almost everybody to the extent that they are co-equal in their responsibilities and their nominations. That's all we did with this section.
All right, I see no, do we have any questions or concerns about this one?
Not this time. I don't have anything.
All right, do we have a motion to accept policy 721?
So move.
Seconded. Okay, moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel to accept policy 721, so it will be moved forward to the school board for information. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
And like I said, you'll see an example coming up with the replacement of the gifted advisory committee, should be coming to you in another meeting or two. All right, this is 751. This is also in the community relations. This is use of school board equipment. While we don't generally lend it out to the public, it is not unusual for us to be asked by other agencies such as city, police or something, if we have a piece of equipment that they need to borrow, we occasionally lend that out for this. I remember writing this a long time ago, but we have not made any changes to it. So this is simply the 5-year review, and we're not recommending any changes.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So can you give me some examples of equipment being,
The last
loaned
time I
out?
did this, I think it
Or-
had to do with some kind of, and I'm not gonna use the right term, but like a tractor forklift to work on a field that one of the baseball organizations rents from us, has a lease with us, and they needed the equipment to do something on the field. I remember another time when the police department for an event needed a piece of equipment, so rather than go rent it from somewhere, we had one and they asked us to use it for their event. And it's something, they're more like a forklift or some larger piece of equipment, but I'm not even sure there's anything.
Yeah, so, because when you say equipment, I'm thinking of, I don't know, a scout troop wanting to borrow something and, but I think that when you're getting into like something bigger, like perhaps what you're talking about, which is almost like a vehicle, I almost think that we need to have a different section like for vehicles. 'Cause I know at
Well, we
one
actually
time-
have a rule on vehicles that there's another state law having to do with them, they can only be used for certain purposes. They tend to have to be another government organization for that, it's like school buses, they can't just be rented by anybody, there's only certain groups that are authorized to rent that, so I wouldn't worry about the vehicles as much. The only other example I can think of is sometimes we have, religious groups that rent our facilities for their services, and they borrow like sound equipment inside of our buildings that we've had. But I can't think of another example of internal stuff, it's usually, I wanna say like lawn type of equipment or construction type of things that we might have on our property.
Okay, because I know when we loaned or rented out, and I can't remember which, all the buses for something in the water. That had. okay,
That
so-
falls under a different state statute having to do with school buses, and they're limited groups, and it was actually amended a couple of years ago. We can loan it out to the city, so Parks and Recs has used it on there. We signed an agreement with the city for the festival, which is something in the water. We were able to use it that way by sending the cities, because they were a co-sponsor on the something with the water, that's how we got those buses, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it. You can rent buses for, persons with disabilities, so you will see Special Olympics in Virginia Beach used to, I don't think they do it anymore, but they used to rent out buses for their events, or elderly individuals, usually in an emergency situation, if you needed to evacuate them from, like a hurricane coming, we have arrangements where we can go to some of the elder care facilities and bring them over, that's what I'm aware of. So that's covered by a different statute under transportation.
Do you think there's any need to like add it here? So, because we have a lot of cars or no groups or individuals or,
I don't think
Anybody
it
using our
qualifies as
cars?
equipment. I would think that's the vehicles one, which is under under section 3. So use of school equipment, I'm thinking, I'm gonna call it internal to a building, like, something in a cafeteria, some like, well, you're right, I have to think back on this. We have like, what I'm aware of are like, something like forklifts, tractor type of things have been used. They're not the type of things you would transport a student on, they were a piece of equipment used to.
okay, could you let me know the policy or whatever for vehicles? Because I think that needs to be I agree, it needs to be totally separate, but some might interpret it as equipment.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's 752 that's linked here, which I'm good. Do you want us to get back to you about this one and
Yeah,
then find
'cause
out which equipment?
Because whether we need to add it here or if it's fine that we need to look at the other one, but maybe in tandem with this one.
Right, because you use community relations and, it's just not coming together as far as community relations. So would we loan our bus and a driver to the community, like you said, for elderly to go somewhere?
We do have emergencies, so in a hurricane situation, we have agreements with the Red Cross in the city, and we do supply the drivers and the buses for that, which is
But-
allowable use.
Yeah, but to me, that would be different. Emergencies, I know we do that. We even use our buildings for
Yes, ma'am.
emergency. I get that part, but number one, what I had on there, you said covered by an agreement. What kind of agreement? Number two, loan or rented. That's a concern. What is a loan and what is rented? And number three, same or reasonable, similar condition when we get it back. What's going to insure us? Is there some kind of insurance that they're going to be covered with, or they have to sign? Because when I go to rent a car, I got to use my insurance for that car, or I have to buy their insurance. And then we have to spec the car before, the ding there, scratch there. So I'm just concerned, are we going to use some of those things? Because when I think about, when you say this community relationship, is it the buses, or is it a sound system, is it a building? So I just need to know where we are.
How about we talk with risk management and facilities about when this would happen? I do know when I've done this in the past, we would require the police department because we know they're covered by some meeting like we are. But other groups we would have had, like if you were a church group running out of a facility, you would have provided us a certificate of insurance, or any Girl Scout troop or Boy Scout troop coming in has to provide the certificate of insurance. So we would have arranged for that to happen. A government agency is not necessarily going to have the certificate of insurance for that, but they would otherwise be covered. But why don't we have the facilities or risk management come back?
Yeah,
and
that would
give
be
you-
great, because I know in that one case with something in the water, and that's just kind of, I don't know why, I just remember that, but I remember it was a school board vote, so which comes before the school board and which doesn't, and we did have those conversations, who's gonna clean it, who's gonna make sure, all that stuff. So, that'd be great. Okay, so is that fine to bring this back and
Yes.
have your folks here?
Yeah, and this was
Okay.
simply on the 5-year review, so
Yeah.
we've still got time.
Okay, bring back to PRC. Okay, 758, relations with government agencies.
Don't really know why we've had this policy, but I know we updated in 2020 to list the other types of agencies. So that it used to be a little bit less than this. The school division is encouraged to cooperate with governmental agencies in promoting the general public interest and educational welfare of the pupils, including but not limited to social services, recreation, health, safety, fire, civil defense, and law enforcement. And other than, we were correcting some grammatical stuff with including, and that we're not recommending any other changes.
The heading of it, community relations, just trying to pull that in with what you are seeing here. Relationship with governmental agencies. The vision is encouraged to cooperate with governmental agency in promoting the general public interest and education welfare of the pupil. Not limited to. I don't know, are there certain policies or procedures we have with our FACE department, the family and community engagement, that this might fall under somewhere? And I think what's throwing me is the topic, community relationships, relations.
Well, this falls, community relations is other groups generally I would call outside of us, outside of our school division. So that's a section, of course, just for the public's viewing, you have 7 sections, first one being bylaws, and then you go into administration, you have business and operational matters, then you go into 4, which is personnel, 5, which is students, 6 is instructional, and 7 is sort of your catch-all of community relations.
So what I'm understanding you say, this is a policy that we allow for educational structure for our students, which will include these particular departments or these particular,
These are
outside.
examples, because it's including and not limited to. So, as you're aware, we do a lot of work with social services, and a
Yes.
whole lot of programs. Health department, obviously, we deal with the health department, a lot of regular issues. Vaccines are an issue. We just saw our measles incident, really, when we had COVID, they were heavily involved with us, helping us figure out how to handle it. Fire department comes in on a number of different types of events for us, fire safety issues coming in every year. Civil defense is mostly National Guard coming in, a couple other events, and law enforcement, obviously, we have law enforcement all over the place in the schools. So these were just examples of other government agencies that we know we're working with.
Okay, so that would include something like when we interact with, Oceana Base for STEM?
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha, all right.
All right, do I have a motion to accept policy 758 and move it on to the school board?
Yes,
So moved by Ms. Felton,
so moved. That's all
seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor?
right. Aye.
Aye, opposed, so that one goes on to the school board. Okay.
We did want to bring to your attention, because we're working on some big policies, so please know that, and just, when we'll get them to you, we believe they need to come in October, so we want to give you a heads up that we have been working on the restraint and seclusion policy and regulation, we have them in there. There's interest by SEAC in that particular, policy, they're long, long regulations. Again, we currently have policies and regulations on, so this isn't new, but just prepare yourself that there's gonna be some long ones to talk about, and there will be some other groups that are interested in it. Also, we've been informed that we're probably going to bring you at least one, maybe two policies having to do with facility-related procurement. One will have to do with the method of procurement, particularly since we're building some new school facilities. We wanted to add some options for you. We looked at a procedure that the schools have, city has, we've looked at a procedure some other school divisions have, and we're going to take another look at the PPA, just make sure we're up to date with the code, but we will have another procedure for you. Also, pretty long technical, regulations that we'll bring in, so just heads up, you might have a lot in October.
Okay, that leads me to some other, I guess, other business, and I talked with my two colleagues, yesterday and today. If we could, first of all, LB, if there's any way I could get the minutes, like next week, like the week after our meeting, if I could get the minutes so that we could make sure we preview that. And then the draft agenda, if I could get that 7 to 10 days outside of our next meeting. And then the agenda and all the supporting documents, is there any way that we can get them like Thursday before the meeting? Because if we have, I mean, we're having budget and then we're having these two things. If we get it Monday and we have a school board meeting Tuesday, that doesn't give the three of us enough time. So, we just really need to look at it more so that we can give y'all suggestions and we can do that. So if those timeframes are, do you think that's reasonable for us to do that?
We'll just put it on the calendar, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, oh yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Also, I was wondering if it'd be possible when you send the email, is there any way you could hyperlink the policies? So we, you know what I'm saying, we could click on it instead of,
Yeah, thank you.
you know,
Yes,
especially for people like me.
yes, that is an awesome idea.
Do you want it hyperlinked on the agenda or just copied
Both.
and pasted?
I'm sorry, I would like both, but I like what, Mr. Bourne-Steele is saying as well, so you can click on it and take you right to the,
I wasn't sure if you wanted it copied and pasted into the email or if you just wanted it hyperlinked on the agenda.
Do you want it like a school board agenda? where you
Yes.
click
Yeah,
on it?
I like
Okay,
the
that's-
agenda.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
It's
I do.
easy. Okay.
It is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bonsill. That'll help. Just trying to help each other because we got a lot coming down the road here. All right, so our next meeting is October 22nd at 3:30, and this meeting is adjourned at 5. October 22nd.
I think it's a Wednesday.
It is a Wednesday.
October 22nd is a, October 22nd.
It's a
Yeah, it's a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Because I think we do have a Thursday one coming up, don't we? Or no, I'm not
I don't know. You've got the whole did you send that to us? Our whole all our meetings?
I think is it on your meeting minutes from last?
Oh, yeah, it should be
hold
on our
on.
What
minutes.
day is it?
If you could send that again.
October 22nd?
Yeah, a Wednesday.
Oh, I put in wrong day.
Yeah, and if you check on page 3, the meeting minutes from last month, you set all
Okay,
your
good.
dates.
Okay, perfect. All right, the meeting is adjourned at 5:30. Thank you, everybody, for your